Great.
All right, then I will start with introducing you very quickly. So this is the seventh Humanitarian Game Network webinar, where we'll be talking about After the Game, which is an immersive experience about structural violence at the US's external borders. We are here with Jana Stallein and Imaad Manzar. I'll introduce you quickly so we know who you are. So Imaad Manzar is the design lead and co-founder at Fantastic Foe and Spoondrift Games, where he develops both impact-driven and entertainment games. His recent project, After the Game, is an immersive experience about the challenges and structural violence faced by people on the move at the European Union's external borders. His work also includes VR therapy and coaching tools, firefighter training simulations, and experimental entertainment projects such as a horror cozy game about making sushi for monsters and a colonism roguelike about rebuilding community after an apocalyptic event. He also works as a level designer, sound designer, and creative producer, bringing a cross-disciplinary approach to the development of interactive experiences.
Thank
Very
you for that
happy.
introduction.
Yes, very happy to have you here. And Jana Stallein is a master's student in documentary film, directing at the Konrad Wolf Film University in Babelsberg, and works as a freelance editor. Her first feature-length documentary, Where the Waves Took Her, produced in collaboration with the German public broadcaster RBB, premiered at the Hof International Film Festival, where it received a special mention in the Granite documentary competition. Her first directorial work in VR, the immersive experience After the Game, premiered at the International Film Festival Rotterdam in 2026. As an editor, she has edited numerous short and feature films, as well as the Grimm Prize-winning historical web series Haus Kummerfeld. I hope that's pronounced correctly. As a director, she received the SI Star Young Talent Award in 2026.
Thank you.
Great. Yeah, thank you again for the introductions. I was going to introduce myself, but now I don't need to, and I guess so was Yana. So I think Yana, maybe you can take it away by introducing After the Game a bit.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having us and thank you for listening. So we're gonna talk about the immersive VR experience after the game today, which talks about people on the move trying to cross the EU border from Bosnia to Croatia in this case, and talking about their everyday struggles through objects.
So
Um,
off to the trailer, I guess.
yeah.
There we
So
go.
to explain you a little bit better, we're gonna show you the trailer first, and then we're gonna dive a bit deeper into the topics.
تو یه چیزایی که دیدم اصلا باورم نمیشد یه روزی من اینا رو تجربه کنم. خیلی سخت بود، خیلی سخت بود.
منه که 5 سال نه خانواده رو دیدم، نه پدر نه مادر نه هیچ، نه زندگی درستی داشتم نه هیچ.
یه چیزایی میبینیم که دیگه عمرمون ندیدیم، وحشتناک.
Here once lived Dee. She was 9, waiting impatiently for her 10th birthday.
Okay, so this was the trailer, and now I would like to tell you a bit more about the situation in Bosnia and what inspired us to do this VR experience. So Bosnia is bordering to the EU country Croatia and Italy as well, but here we're mainly talking about the way between Bosnia and Croatia. People are trying to cross the border mainly by foot to ask for asylum in Croatia, so in the EU. And these are mainly people from Afghanistan, for example, from Iran, Iraq, but also from Chile, lots of different countries that all do the Balkan route and then arrive in Bosnia. So trying to cross the border, they often get stopped by the police and are victims of illegal pushbacks. And that means that the border police takes them back to Bosnia, and this often in a very violent way. So this involves hitting, destroying phones, being pushed into the river, or chased by dogs. And a bit ironically, this is called going on game or like doing the game. So this is why we picked up the name and called the VR experience after the game. And these people stop in squats, and they become a very important place for them. So squats are mainly unfinished buildings or abandoned houses. There are a lot of them in Bosnia still because of the war that is not so long ago. And they're not made for this purpose. So there's no governmental aid, there's no running water, no windows, no heating. But people still really make a home out of it. And it's sometimes they stay there only for one night or one day. Sometimes they stay for weeks and sometimes even for months or years. And it's mainly a temporary home because you never know when you leave if you're going to come back or not. So these places are also left behind in a very certain way that we found really interesting. So for the first time, I went to Bosnia in 2022 and I helped out a collective that is called No Name Kitchen. And they're there, even though the name would make you think that they are cooking for people, but they are mainly there to provide food that is not cooked, but so people can cook themselves. They provide wood for fires, warm clothes and shoes. But the most important work that they do is that they collect testimonies of the pushbacks, because these pushbacks are illegal. And so the organization is trying to fight for the right to ask for asylum in the EU. And when I was there for the first time, I was also helping to collect testimonies. And I was often invited into these squats, into the space where we cooked together, where we had tea together, and where we sat together and talked. And these situations were the reason for after the game, because I wanted to find a way that people could also feel the warmth in the room and listen to the same stories like I did.
So yeah, that begs then the question, why virtual reality and why not just a documentary film? So a case for VR is first and foremost that it's spatial embodiment. Like Jana could go to the squat and experience this. We also want the people playing this experience to feel like what it is to be inside a squat and how people live their daily lives in these scenarios. Whereas in a film, it would be cutting from scene to scene. Here, they're embodying virtually the squat and the space within it. The second thing is, of course, that with an interactive experience, it's active versus passive. So rather than just sitting there and experiencing the information passively, you do these basic daily things like making a cup of tea and the daily tasks of people in those squats. And yeah, that then allows you to also hear their testimonies in a more active way. And most importantly, we want to protect their identities because we do not want to reproduce the visual economy of suffering. If faces can endanger people, exposure can criminalize them. We needed another form, and that's why we chose VR. So with Jana's first visit and some material, we had to figure out how is our partnership going to work. The first constraint was a limited budget, which we got from the Median Board Berlin Brandenburg, but we didn't have enough to do something super detailed. So we were like, okay, we need to figure out an economical pipeline to be able to do this. And that had constraints and limitations. Of course, we had some technical competence in VR with firefighter training and other things, but we had to figure out, all right, how can we do this in the most efficient way? Was it going to be 360 video or photogrammetry or a combination of the two? But then we settled on photogrammetry, did some internal testing, and tested the pipeline in November 2024. And then Jana and Jonas, the cameraman, were off to Bosnia once again in December 2025.
Yeah. As I already mentioned in the first visit, I already collected quite a lot of testimonies, and they are also part of the experience now. But on the second visit, the goal was more to find objects that we can place in the game and connect these then to stories. So the cameraman, a man and me went to Bosnia again for 2 weeks. And I think that's also important to say, like the first time I was there, I spent a whole month there and I was really just focused on helping the organization. And this time we went there with the purpose of like doing the game, and we realized 2 weeks are not a lot of time. So it was really a good thing that I went there before for a month. That was a huge learning that we had. Because finding a connection to people within 2 weeks is really too little time. And what we did, first of all, was scouting for a squad that we could find to scan that room. And while we were scouting, we actually ran into two people who were just pushed back from the border. And they came to us and they were like completely wet. They were just being pushed into the river and were about to walk back to a camp. So we were able to help them with like a bit of firewood, new clothes, and they could stay in the squad that we then later used for our VR experience. And this is a situation that really, really happens on a daily basis there. Um, and when we scanned this room the day later, we had to move really quickly because there are neighbors that are really like paying attention on what people do there. The police is constantly checking, and they really don't like people with cameras there. And also, what we realized on the second visit is that the situation has changed a little bit. So the squads were still used, but they were not used as much as on the visit in 2022. Because the police got really, really strict and they checked the squads really, really often. They made people move out, and it even came that they started to burn houses so that people could not live there anymore. And a new camp was built, a man-only camp, like on the top of the mountain in the middle of nowhere, making it really impossible to keep trying to cross the border. So at the moment, the Bosnian-Croatian border is a little bit less used, but this is actually a thing that happens quite a lot when we talk about routes where people flee on, because they change frequently, and now it's more like going through Serbia, but the situation there is very much the same as in Bosnia.
So yeah, it became evident to us that we need to document this ever-changing landscape and this moment because, yeah, things change so frequently, and I don't know how much of this will ever stay and be reported. But at the same time, we had to consider how we are going to document this and how we are going to make people experience this. So one of the first consideration was that when people hear VR, they often imagine simulation, putting the audience inside a dramatic event. But we deliberately avoided recreating the moment of a border crossing or moments of violence, but shared them as testimony. Instead, we focus on presence and waiting. In the experience, the audience stands inside the reconstructed squad. They can move through the space slowly and interact with the objects found there. When they pick up and place these objects, they hear the story connected to it based on the testimonies that Jana recorded. So rather than simulating crisis, the experience asks the audience to spend time inside a space of waiting and to encounter the traces that people left behind. The only place we use urgency is when they have accomplished their interactions each day, and that is through audio clues and text messages, and a little bit based on what Jana mentioned, right? Like, oh, you'll hear that there's a neighbor outside and you'll get a text message warning, and then the day is complete, and then you visit the squad on a different day, or oh, you can hear the police sirens in the distance. Then the second consideration was that, yes, it's an ephemeral space. We have to memorialize it. How do we do this best? Because Jana noticed that during her visits at the border region that these spaces are incredibly fragile. Squats are cleared, burned even. Personal belongings are confiscated or thrown away. Entire environments that held months or years of people's lives can disappear in a matter of days, or not be like safe to access anymore. You can tell also that the people that pass through these places yearn for some sense of permanence. Like you can see them writing their names on the walls or documenting their own stories or the stories of others. For example, one story in the experience we found of this girl who traveled many countries and then eventually settled in Germany, we found written on a wall in one of these squats. So by capturing the squat through photogrammetry, we were able to preserve not just an image of the space, but its spatial memory, the arrangement of rooms, the objects, the marks left on the walls. In that sense, the project acts as a form of digital memorialization. It preserves a place that would otherwise leave almost no trace in historical record. And then this I touched on a bit previously as well, that it's important that we protect people's identities because from the beginning, that was essential to us. While we had the consent for some people to show their faces, in large, we tried to avoid this. Many refugees at the border are in a legally precarious situation, and are being visually identified could expose them to risk. The stories presented are connected to the objects then and the space, a teacup, an improvised stove, writing on the wall. This approach allows us and the audience to hear real experiences while keeping the individuals themselves anonymous. The project is therefore framed as docufiction, where the testimonies are real, the location is real, the object scans are real, but the connections, the spatial connections between the stories and the objects, those are constructed in order to protect the people who shared them. So, like the sequence of days, and it's an easier narrative to go through as well. But it allows us to preserve the emotional truth of the stories without exposing the individuals behind them. So in April 2025, by the end, we had an experience where you're a collaborator of No Name Kitchen that is visiting the squats on different days. The people have left, and you hear their stories by interacting with the objects they left behind. On the last day, all you can do is even witness their stories. At the end, there's a virtual reflection space where you can see additional footage and tie the experience back to reality. And then once this was finished, unlike the people in these situations, we had the privilege to also take a break and reflect and strategize. How are we, distributing this? What we were used to is video games where, you just take it to as many events as possible, have people play test it, and build an audience that way. But this immersive experience is more like film. So we had to apply to different festivals and figure out where it would open first, and then we can take it to other places. Um, but the question that kept lingering was, how can this be more than just memorialization? Actually do with this experience? And so in summer of 2025, we got in touch with Sebastian Hess at Kölner Spendenkonvoi, who was wanting to plan their summer fundraising event. And it was a solidarity party. And we decided that, yeah, we'll set up a stall there just to provide one of the few things for people to do at that event because they had speeches and concerts and raffles. And yeah, what was interesting for us when we were showing this was that unless, some concert or something else is starting up, everyone that played it played the entire experience all the way to the end. And of course, we were one piece in their fundraising puzzle. But what was also great was that they were able to then, through the event, raise 5,500 euros in that day. And then, of course, our next opportunity to show this was at the premiere of the experience.
Yes, as Imad already mentioned briefly before, like we went the filmmaker kind of way for the distribution. So we applied to a bunch of festivals that show VR experiences, and we were able to present it in the Netherlands at the Film Festival Rotterdam, where we had 6 headsets at the same time. And we were really, really happy to see that most of the time it was even booked out, and a lot of people really liked the experience. But we also saw, like at the opening, where it was more like a walk-in and try kind of situation rather than booking slots, that a few unexperienced users, I would say, really struggled with the tutorial actually. So they never were able to actually play the whole like or start the actual game, but they were stuck in the tutorial. So this is like also a big learning that we still need to figure out how to do the tutorial better or easier. But at the same time, for some people, it was like really, really easy and they got through it really easily. So it's really a challenge to find a balance between that. But yeah, for the next experience, we know now how we want to handle that. And now we're just waiting for more festivals, but we're also showing it at the museums at the same time. So through the film festival in Rotterdam, we had another museum in the Netherlands showing the VR experience already. There they made the same experience. Like some people went through super easy, some people had trouble at the tutorial. And what we also missed, and a big learning that we have now, is that we want to start to collect donations with like a QR code or something like this, because it's nice to kind of, if you experience the experience and you hear all the stories, it's kind of nice to have like an action that you can do after. So we want to start to put something where you can put donations. In general, what we have planned for like the financial side is that whenever we get money from a museum or something, we split it. 1/3 goes to Fantastic Four, 1/3 goes to me and my team, as we were all students working on it, and we are not allowed to earn money while we are at the university doing a university project. It's nice to have like a little bit of outcome of it now, and then the other third is donations, either for No Name Kitchen, or I kind of like save the donations and people that contact me personally from the time in Bosnia. I can help them out. Like sometimes it's just someone wants to go to a doctor and get some medication, and then I can send them some money or like book a train to go somewhere and be able to help like really first hand with the problems that they need rather than just sending money to someone. And
Ye-
also,
Mhm.
we're trying. Is it your turn or mine?
No,
Sorry.
no, it's yours. It's yours.
Okay, okay. I mean, if you're as excited as me, you can talk about it. So we also started to plan a new project together. Because we thought it's really nice how it works with the testimonies and like moving objects. So now we would like to focus more on the situation in Germany, and like look into our own country rather than in other countries. And we would like to do a project where we talk about the refugee housing or accommodations in Germany, and do it a bit like a detective game. You will have to find out what happened in a situation, and through finding out what happened, you learn a lot about the situation of people living in camps or refugee housing, and with a focus on women, for example, or children that are living there, and like the conditions that they have to live in, which are unfortunately very shit in Germany.
Yeah. And often what we get to see is the most sanitized version, like this, they'll share the cleanest version of the room or the nicest image of it. So yeah, this is our next step, but like, how do we intend on doing it? So we are considering not our like after the game, not as a one-off, but as a almost VR docufiction framework, where the first step, as Jana has already talked about, is building trust through volunteering and participating with different people who are embedded in these situations. But then, yes, collecting testimonies and scouting locations, and then using photogrammetry to memorialize the location and these objects that the stories would be tied to. Following that, crafting the experience itself, where the narrative is told through object interactions, and a virtual reflection space at the end, so where people can, try tie what they just experienced back to reality. And yeah, also this additional thing that we've found that this experience can be used for event-based fundraising. so at the Spenden Convoy or anywhere we screen it. That I think would be our front, let's say, framework in a nutshell. But if I get to geek out a bit more, we also want to improve the game loop a bit, where in the first one, it had a separate tutorial area, then you visit the squad consecutively on 4 days, and then a reflection space. Here we would use the ephemeral space as the first place where you do basic tutorials and have some inciting incident. That would then take you to a like surreal mind palace location where what you saw as clues plus actual testimonies and maybe news articles and evidence are put together so you can contextualize the fictional part of the story with real facts and figures. And then between the mind palace, you loop back to the location on a different day and you basically keep collecting clues and evidence that expands the mind palace. At the end, then in the reflection room, you would have an exhibition of what you collected, but then also to tie it back to the actual, situation on the ground and more, behind the scenes footage, for example. So finally, yeah, what were our observations and what lessons did we learn? Like Jana mentioned, we definitely need more time to build trust and collect testimonies. Had Jana not gone there before, we would not have had enough. So maybe multiple visits to, just build trust and scout locations and find testimonies. And of course, working with embedded collaborators is essential. Like we could not have done this without the help of No Name Kitchen, and we would probably look for both institutional partners, but also other partners that are on the ground that are maybe staying in these locations or have stayed in these locations or know people that stay in these locations. And yes, as Jana mentioned already, the controls and interactions need to be as simple as possible for the widest range of audience, because we already have some ideas of how to simplify it further. But yes, we have a very wide range of people, and this should be as accessible as possible. What we also observed was once people got over that hump, the immersion was strong and they tended to really buy into the experience and try to complete it. We also would prefer a more systematic approach to measuring impact. This was our first project, right? So we just kind of did it and winged it and tried to see, okay, what all can we, expand into? But there are different tools and methods for like, measuring impact of digital media on the person psychologically, for example, or impact in general. But finally, we saw that, yes, there is an early potential for this not to just be memorialization art, but also a tool for fundraising. And I think that is something that we would like to dive into further and see, okay, how else can we partner with different institutions to use this, not just for memorialization, but also for fundraising. So thank you very much for your attention. And, based on our previous point, if you want to donate to No Name Kitchen, just go to nonamekitchen.org/donate, and you can find a few different ways to donate there. And if you have anything you want to tell us, please reach out to us at atg@fantasticpo.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I may have a little question about the impact, because you mentioned just in the last part of the presentation the impact.
Mhm.
But what would you consider, if you try to rationalize your initial goal on the project, what would be the best way to measure the impact of it? Is it qualitative, quantitative? I mean, what?
I believe this would have to be qualitative. Like initially, I was just looking at there are some qualitative surveys and feedback that are established for digital media and how they impact people. So like how they like a questionnaire after how they perceived it. So and then maybe we can try to compare this with like linear media, like a documentary or something on similar topics, and then basically see if there's a greater impact, or impact is one metric, empathy is another. So there are a few different metrics that I looked into at, like, let's say in an early stage, but this we definitely need to, was one of my points, that we need to look further into what's a more formalized method of measuring this.
Yeah. I don't know, Olivia, if you have questions.
Ah, perfect.
Uh,
Yeah.
I have no
Mm.
questions that are like coming. I want to what I did want to know when your second visit was, because I think you said the first one was in 2022. Maybe I missed it, but
No, I didn't say it. You're completely right. It was in
December 2024.
2024, so
Ah.
2 years
Oh,
later.
okay, 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because my first was in January 2022, so it was really
Yeah.
Even more.
in 2
than
years
two.
the situation changed a lot, but it can really
Yeah.
easily just go back to what it was before.
And you mentioned the empathy, Imaad, and in general, when games that try to create empathy, they are showing the person, or the person who are concerned or you want to create the empathy with. And I mean, here the approach is completely different because you are just in the shoes. Are we really in the shoes of the person? I'm not sure. We just see the main thing is
We're
the
not in
interact.
the
Yeah.
We're not
So
trying to simulate that, but the empathy of being in a place like this, I guess how I can put it in a non-qualitative or quantitative, but just a, what's the word for it, anecdotal way, is every time someone took off the headset, they were either staring a little bit into the middle distance or their eyes were a little bit glassy. So we could feel the impact. And what I would like to do is definitely figure out how we can actually, quantify this and see if there's even any, additional benefit to doing this through VR versus docufiction, because there are some clear format differences, that allow people to embody it. And so there's an experiential difference for sure. But is there an impact difference? That's an interesting question to me.
true. So also maybe currently the only way to experience it is to actually play it into a festival or a place where you have
Yes.
access to the thing.
Museums, festivals, events.
So it's a very limited way to distribute and reach out people. But I can say that no, there is a lot of people who just look at others having experience, like looking at the stream of a game. I mean, that could be also a way to continue it, or at least make it accessible for people like in festival who are not too much into interacting into a VR experience, or even who will never, let's say, download it from Steam to play it with the gear because they don't have it. So did you think about other ways to reach out people than playing it in festival?
So outside of festivals and museums and events, no, we thought it's more of an impactful situation here. When we have more control of how to set up at these locations, what we typically do is that while someone is playing it, it is being live streamed to a screen. So other people can also gather and watch, and then that always helps make them more curious, and then someone else wants to play it as well. So there's that, but I do feel like some of it is lost when you're just watching a stream of the experience versus when you're in that space, because the stream, we have the full gameplay recorded, we've shared it with people as well, but it's it's not being fully transmitted. So for this kind of a project, I think it's more of the depth of experience rather than the range, because for the range there is existing media, right? There are documentaries, there are news reports and stuff, but they're very, like, they're a lot of surface level, or not necessarily surface, they can be detailed as well. They're very fact and figure oriented. There'll be an occasional case study, but at an emotional level, what we saw people reacting to this was different.
Okay.
But I mean, it's still able, like people can still play it at home, for example.
Yeah.
It's not like this is not working, but the experience is better if you are in an open space and someone is like, after
Yes.
you took off the glasses, someone is offering you a tea and
Yeah.
you if you want to talk about what you just experienced.
Exactly. And right now we're thinking mainly locations, but I think eventually at a certain point we will just make this available on the Meta platform, for example.
Yeah.
Okay. I think I'm done with my question.
Well, you know where to contact us if you have follow-up questions.
Yes.
Exactly.
Great. Then thank you for this presentation and this great project. I hope you will have the opportunity to do a little brother or little sister of this project in the future.
Looking forward to it.
Yes.
And thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Goodbye.